Does the Brazil that you imagine look like this, especially Sao Paulo, the most populous city in South America? We're overcast with love today. Overcast. Seriously overcast. I've explained before that I follow the Uberman schedule, which is viewing morning sunlight 100,000 lux directly into the eyes before 9 a.m. That's actually been a difficult feat here in South America, Brazil, the last couple of days because this has been the weather. Now, the problem is that different weather is ideal for different circumstances. I'd rather have my morning sunlight and then cover up, but since that's proven to be difficult, I guess I'll just resort to staying out here a little bit longer during the prime hours. When I mean direct into the eyes, I actually mean with no sunglasses. I have transitions lenses, which are considered probably sunglasses, so generally speaking, I just take them off and sit my ass down. As a little science lesson, weather like this is probably about 5,000-6,000 lux. So we're looking at being outside in this kind of weather for a good 20 odd minutes. Well, guess what I have in spade? Mucho tiempo and a lot of things to talk about always. Well, even if I have nothing to really talk about, I will force the situation out. Sao Paulo has been really nothing. As in, anyone who I've asked who knows Sao Paulo well has told me there's nothing to do in this city. This is a commercial work city. Yes, it's the most populous in all of Brazil and South America. Depending on sources, it's anywhere from 10 to 20 million people. It's like a New York City, except without the good reputation for some reason. Everybody who I've asked who has experience in Sao Paulo, either having been born, living, or working here, have had the same opinion. It's just a large, sprawling metropolis with nothing going for it in terms of turismo. Okay, well, I'm a little more generous because I've been here now for about 18-ish hours. My impression of Sao Paulo is it's indeed a sprawling metropolis, but I was able to keep to my rule. My rule is, generally speaking, I pick the cheapest hostel that I can find, and then I walk to it from wherever I've landed. Mostly now that I've been backpacking, it's been bus stations, long-haul bus stations. Actually, it's been all long-haul bus stations, and surprisingly, I've been able to walk every single one. This last one was a bit of a longer walk at 1.5 hours to here from Verafunda, Rodoviária, because there are several in Sao Paulo. Obviously, a city as big as 22 million on the upward approximation is going to have a couple of long-haul bus stations to service it. The two main ones are Barafunda and Tietê. I have the fortunate distinction of walking from one to the hostel and into the other because those are where the cheapest buses are. I bussed from Foz do Iguaçu to Barafunda, and I will bus from Tietê to Rio de Janeiro. This trip has really been an exercise in spontaneity because ever since I left for the uni salt flats, I have actually planned nothing in advance. There were some small portions that I planned in advance previously from Maldonado, Peru in. For example, cheap hostels here or there. But after I've had some strange experiences with Booking.com and hostels, I've switched over to complete spontaneity. Hostels here are a little snaky in a sense that you gotta talk with them, point out that they have cheaper prices on Booking.com, because this is the complete opposite of Mexico. In Mexico, practically all of the accommodations are cheaper when you just walk in and book. Here in South America, the situation has been the opposite. Maybe they think that you are desperate now, and in some ways, yes, living accommodations some would consider a basic human right. Especially if you're like me, you've been walking for anywhere from half an hour to an hour and a half, you'd think, well, you're just going to pay whatever they tell you. But I always would pick the cheapest. I would pick either their walk-in rate or their Booking.com rate. And so far, every single establishment has quoted me a walk-in price higher than the Booking.com rate. Again, that's opposite of Mexico. And you'd argue perhaps a little snaky because you ask them, hey, do you have these rooms available? And at first it's this expensive room, and then, suddenly I forgot, it's actually available, or who knows. Maybe snaky is a little bit mean of me. I mean, people generally in South America and around the world have been exceedingly generous and kind. A lot of them have fed me. In fact, in every single hostel I've stayed in here in South America, if other guests are cooking or have food in front of them, they'll offer it to me. I've had a couple of people I know literally flat out cook me alongside their meals and feed me more than they were eating themselves. So generally speaking, the people have been kind, genuine, and they really want you to have a good impression of their city and country. They're proud here to show off their culture, and they're even proud if they're from other countries. I've connected with a couple of people who are from, for example, Morocco, over soccer and mint tea, Casablanca and Rabat. And largely people have been, as I said, genuine, kind. It's just that sometimes I wonder to myself, my need to have the best rock bottom price, that's a psychological thing. I'll call it a thing because I have no idea what else to call it. I'd hardly call it a problem unless it actually affects my ability to do things. And I've yet to find that that's the case, but sometimes I feel an obsessive compulsive side of me where even if the money amount is very little, I'll go hard in on something and the ROI for my time seems to be a waste, but I'll characterize it as such. For example, this reminds me of a Drew Lynch joke where he was negotiating bartering in Mexico, and he found out because of the exchange rate that he was essentially bartering for the same price with a differential of a couple dimes here or there. So I often think about that joke because he's obviously joking about the fact that he's being a cheap tight ass in a way where he's actually saving very little money in American dollars. But actually, if you convert it to local currency, what you could buy with that is still quite a lot. So for example, in some of these hostels, actually in most of them, they have wanted to charge me 1 reals. I mean, 5 actually. Let me try that again. $1, 5 reales more than their booking.com price. Now, people would think $1. You can buy a lot here with $1. You could buy a meal for $1. That's what I mean. So, on one end, you can argue that, oh, you're being a tight ass, in US dollars it's very little. But on the other end, what people misunderstand about economics is purchasing power is relative to what you can purchase in the country that you're in. So even if it's only quote-unquote $1, you're thinking with your US dollar, Canadian, Australian, European mind, maybe $1 can buy very little. But the equivalent of 5 reais in Brazil, I ain't saying you can buy a lot, but you can still buy a meal. You could still buy a bag of chips, a couple of cookie. Actually, you can buy a whole package of cookies, because that's what I've been doing. So it's that Russell Peters joke now where you save $1 here, no, you save 50 cents here, you save 50 cents there, then you have $1 and you go to the dollar store and you buy yourself something else. Yeah, that's true. That's exactly what I've been doing. So it becomes more of a game with me, because it's the question of, could you survive on $1 a day, US dollar a day in other countries? That's where some of these charities do misrepresent a little bit, because they make it sound like if you had $1 or $2, couple dollars a day, you'd be absolute toast. But you have to think about relative purchasing power. Now, are you going to be rolled in? No. But can you live? Yes. Just think of it this way. You could actually stay in a hostel for a couple bucks a night. On average, I've been spending anywhere from $3 to $7 a night. Now, that's the thing. Okay? That means you could probably live on $10 a day, including food, if you were extremely judicious with your money. 10 times 30, you could live for 300 in South America. And actually, I ain't even cutting costs well enough, because if you rented a place, you'd actually be saving a lot more money. The only difference would be, as I've spoken to a local Brazilian, you need upfront a certain amount to guarantee that, but that's always been the case. It's like buying in bulk. You're buying days in bulk. So my point would be, why I bring this up, why I have no worries about money. I force myself on the grand scale to have no worries, because I know that I can literally plant myself anywhere in the developing world and be able to have an okay lifestyle. When I'm talking about saving, 5 reales here or there, that's a game to me. That's just a can you do it video game. It's like a casino game where you actually get to save money. It's something that I can turn off if I need to, and sometimes I've had to turn it off my brain in order to do what I need to do. For example, I scuba dive. Scuba diving, there are cheaper places to do it. I've been researching Rio de Janeiro close to here, and Areal dos Cabo, and it's actually half the price of Mexico. But, I mean, it costs some money, right? And I do things that I like to do. I spend money on experiences. Food, some people would argue, is an experience. Hostel/accommodation for some people is an experience. For me, those are just bare survival tools. So as long as I just have what I barely need, I'm good with what I barely need. That's all I need. Bare minimum for those things. But for things like actual experiences, visceral experiences that are on what I call the adventure axis, Those I'm willing to spend money on. I've done so much this trip already. Galapagos. Machu Picchu, the Amazon, Salinares de Maras, Rainbow Mountain, Lake Titicaca, on both the Bolivian and Peruvian side, Uyuni, Salt Flats, Laguna Colorada, just Iguazu Falls, just so many things. I'm appreciative because I think partly what keeps me motivated on the road is I do introduce elements of real life. As in, some people that I meet who go backpacking or go on vacation, they enter a different mindset where I'm this way at home, but I'm this way on the road, on vacation, while backpacking. I am the same way in all my life. So there's just the authentic self traveling, doing everything the same way. And partly how I introduce it is I do gritty, grimy, daily life things. Because if I were to just float on clouds from high to high to high, from Uyuni, Salt Flats to Iguazu, I think I would lose the passion for traveling very quickly. To be completely honest, there have been times where I have lost it a little bit, and what helps me gain it back is doing weird things like dumpster diving and counting pennies. Because that's what the reality of someone like me has to do. Now, do I have to do it as an absolute survival mechanism? No. But do I have to do it on a long-term scale to be able to afford this kind of lifestyle for the long time that I've been doing it? Yes. I go backpacking 3 to 6 months at a time. In that time, I have to stretch out a budget that someone might blow on a 2 or 3 week vacation. That's why there's the difference. There's often been a joke with some locals when I'm haggling or negotiating. They're like, you're from Canada, you should be rich. Well, I like to challenge that because, first of all, yes, I understand what they mean from an overall standpoint. Even the poorest Canadian is doing much better than the poorest, middle, and even some higher class developing country people. But I mean, money is still something that I do respect as a tool to convert into things I want. So the game is always spend less on the things you care less about. Basic survival, like accommodations and food, fine. I spend money on it, but I spend the bare minimum. And then I can save, and do the other things where I have no discretion. Scuba diving costs what it costs. Even if it's half price here in Rio de Janeiro, it's still probably about $30 a dive. $30 a dive is 5 nights of accommodation. So if you're looking at the relative scale, it's an expensive hobby, even in cheap developing countries. So, you know, you gotta play the math game. And it is what it is. Alright, I think I've exhausted myself. I've got my morning sunlight for today. I'm in a bit of a deficit because it's been overcast and I've been on buses which have taken me out of the sunlight window. But we're gonna call it for now. Yeah, we're gonna call it for now. It's been the amount of time I need to spend to accumulate my sunlight. So, I've done my job. My health job. For myself. Which is actually for my authentic self.